We'll talk, of course, about Penny Marshall's passing with Ann Coulter, who's probably written a book on it. Hey, Ann.
That's very funny. Hello, Derek.
I guess, okay, maybe you're not the world's biggest Penny Marshall file, so we will talk about something else. I'll pick something at random. The reports today that the White House is now getting scared, getting wet feet, getting cold feet about the prospect of a government shutdown over $5 measly billion, less than half a day's spending by the federal government to build some of the southern border wall that they're saying, okay, we want to keep the government open. And as long as Democrats are willing to work with us to find a way that we can shift money around and build this wall. Am I reading it wrong, or is that a major mistake?
No, that's clearly the state of play. I would add that at this point, it's absolutely clear that one of two things is true. Either Trump absolutely never intended to build a wall. It's just a word. Maybe it was like his safe word with Stormy Daniels. He says it like Shazam. Whenever he's in trouble, he just blurts out the wall. But saying the word is the beginning and end of his interest in it. Or he was elected president and has absolutely no idea how to get it done. I would like him to let me know. He and his administration and the RNC keep telling us they've already started the wall. So I'd like him to text me the GPS coordinates so I could go down and take pictures of the parts of the wall.
There are 5 prototypes down
building.
in Texas. If you add those together, it's probably like a good 100 feet.
No, I don't think. Actually, there's no wall built.
I do notice you tweet every day, or almost every day. You tweet a lot about number of miles of wall built so far, 0. Wall built today, 0. Why do you think that is? Do you believe that the president doesn't know how to get this done, or do you think it was a ploy, or what?
I don't know. I don't know, but and the end result is the same. It doesn't make a difference. What is particularly stupid about this right now? I mean, every once in a while he makes noises as if he realizes that, oh my gosh, I'm president, I could build a wall, I don't need Congress. We'll leave aside the stupidity of Republicans in Congress not forcing Democrats to vote against a wall over and over and over again. It's massively popular. Mm-hmm. Your opponents are on the wrong side of a popular issue. Force them to vote on it. Okay, forget that. Trump is the commander-in-chief. Of course he has the authority to build the wall. He seems perfectly aware that he's able to bomb foreign countries based on false intelligence without checking with Congress first. He doesn't need Nancy Pelosi and Paul Ryan for that. So, of course, commander-in-chief, his number one responsibility is to defend this country, not Syria, not Afghanistan, but weirdly enough, our own country. So if he's going to keep throwing that out, because that seems to be the next ploy to keep his supporters believing that he has any intention of building the wall, which it is becoming clear he does not, is to say that he's going to use the military or going to use Homeland Security, both of which he could use. He could use both of them. Either of them.
Right. If he could do all of these things, why hasn't he done any of these things?
Right. Well, then I would also like a text of him telling me what day he intends to use the military to start the wall, because I'd like to go down and take photos of that, too. I think a lot of us would. We'll bring them water. Is he going to use, the Army Civil Corps of Engineers? Will he use the Seabees? Could we get a little more detail on that instead of just saying, well, I might do it on my own, but then never, ever, ever, ever doing it on his own? And, if he had half a brain, he would realize the greatest thing he could do right now. He's so obsessed with Russia and Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen and Michael Flynn and blah, 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 blah. And on one hand, Americans don't particularly care about that. What they cared about were things like, the wall. And it is true, if you get out of Washington and meet normal people, nobody's chattering about Michael Flynn or even Stormy Daniels. But they're aware of it. The media won't talk about anything else. And even if they agree, as I do, that this is all nonsense and the Democrats are just neurotics and sore losers, it doesn't show Trump in his best light. There's no way he's winning that fight. But if he starts building the wall, and how will they respond, Derek? You know how they'll respond. There will be lawsuits. They'll begin impeachment proceedings.
Oh, right. Immediately.
There will be hysteria on the left. That's a fight he wins. that gets not only his supporters energized, but just normal people realizing what we've just been talking about. He's the president. Of course he has the authority to build the wall, and of course that's what we want. I mean, all these Democrats have voted for a wall. Hillary Clinton used to brag about voting for a wall. It's only because Trump won an election by promising to build a wall that Democrats have decided, no, we're against it.
My guest is Ann Coulter. Her latest book, Resistance is Futile, How the Trump-Hating Left Lost Its Collective Mind, and author of, I think, 13 New York Times bestsellers at this point?
Yes, thank you for getting the number right.
A baker's dozen of them, which is a pretty nice thing, although hard to find a container for anything that's a baker's dozen.
That's true.
Are you've been very harsh toward the president, saying you don't believe that he necessarily wants to build a wall anymore. Is that really where you are right now? Have you given up? Have you lost hope? Is it futile in your mind, this wall with this president?
I'd say today is a little bit of a turning point.
So where do we go from here? If we're going to gladly pay them Tuesday for a wall built the next week or whatever, or if we're to rely on the Democratic House to somehow look the other way to allow the president to do something
Well, no, it would be great if they didn't look the other way. Like I say, I mean, the problem, the beginning and the end of the problem is Trump. It's not the Democrats. It's not Pelosi. It's not Republicans. It's not Paul Ryan. He's the president. He ran on building a wall. He's not building the wall. Again, either the whole thing was BS throughout the campaign, and he was just lying to us to get himself elected, or he has no earthly idea how to get it done and no interest in finding out. But it is becoming clearer and clearer that all we're getting is words. We're getting his sex-safe word. The wall. Whenever he's in trouble, he just yells the wall. But there are, I think, increasingly fewer of his supporters who are believing it.
He is sounding like a rejected audition tape to play Tattoo on Fantasy Island. Instead of
Right.
the plane, it's the wall. Weirdly, though, Anne, from Congress, there are some people like Lindsey Grahamnesty, who have come out and said, look, the president wants a wall. We should give him a wall. We absolutely need a wall. It seems like Lindsey Graham is getting more hardcore, at least before now, since McCain's death, than Donald Trump has been lately.
Well, you would think both political parties, everyone who voted for Rubio's amnesty, having seen that this utterly unlikely and at least for president, in many ways a not particularly attractive presidential candidate, beat the most qualified woman ever to run for the office, basically on one promise, the promise to build a wall, and never backing down on that. The Mexican rapist speech, the promise to deport illegals. You would think that having seen that 2016 campaign, which was magnificent, that all politicians, I mean, the one thing they're supposed to know, they could have low IQs, high IQs, they could be extroverts, introverts. The one thing they're supposed to be good at is reading the voters. That's how they keep their jobs. These aren't lifetime appointments. They do need to know where the public stands, and the public is so independents in particular. I don't know if you saw this poll today about, I forget what the percentage is, but large percentage of Americans would be willing to privately fund the wall. And more independents were willing to privately fund the wall than Republicans, random Republican voters. Of course, we did fund the wall. We are funding the wall with our taxes.
Mm-hmm.
We just can't get our rulers to implement it. I mean, this has been... Every time Americans have had a chance to vote on immigration for the past 30 years, they have voted for less of it. They have voted for walls. They have voted to deny welfare benefits to illegals every single time, but we never, ever get it. That was, weirdly, that was part of the reason I think, as I wrote in Trump We Trust, it was actually kind of attractive that Trump was such an unlikely presidential candidate and perhaps not someone you'd necessarily want your daughter to date. Coarse, narcissistic, shallow, so on and so forth. But the great thing about that was it made you think maybe this guy will finally do it because he doesn't care what people think.
But maybe he does now. That's the weird thing. And I know what's coming next, Anne. We have to go a little bit bigger picture here because the discussion next year is going to be, even if they get the $5 billion, that's not nearly enough to build the wall. The discussion is going to shift to we need comprehensive immigration reform. We couldn't possibly just, I don't know, do something crazy like enforce our existing laws and then
They've
change.
tried to pass amnesties by
Right.
comprehensive immigration reform. For any of your listeners who are not regular listeners, that means amnesty. And amnesty has become a word like abortion. They constantly need a euphemism for it. By now, I don't even think they'll allow us to say comprehensive immigration reform, because as soon as people figure out what it is they're talking about, yuck, abortion, amnesty, they have to change the name to pro-choice. It's comprehensive immigration reform. So that's where we are. That's comprehensive immigration reform. And no, Congress, with the assistance of both Republican and Democrat presidents of the United States and the beloved sainted John McCain have tried to pass amnesties 3 times in the last decade, and the American people shut it down.
Right, there are very
shut
few.
It down. It wasn't some activist group. It wasn't a group of senators standing up and openly, bravely opposing it, making the arguments the way, say, Senator Cotton is with this idiotic idea to start releasing criminals. No, the American people would get wind of it and shut down the congressional switchboards. Americans don't want it. Don't worry about comprehensive immigration reform. The problem is, ultimately, we need somebody. We thought it was going to be the president to build the wall we voted for.
So if we don't get it, if he is not the one we have been waiting for, to steal a line
No,
from
he's not.
Barack Obama, then who is? Where do we get it from? Because he was really the only one pushing border security of the entire clown car of 17 Republicans up on those stages.
Absolutely right. Well, I'm very pessimistic, and I'm normally quite Pollyanna-ish and looking at the bright side of things and how there's still hope here and there. I think it's looking pretty bad if Trump doesn't build the wall. I mean, I kind of thought it was over when Romney lost, because we've hit the tipping point on demographics. 80% of post-1970 immigrants vote for the Democrats. That's why the Democrats like them, 80%. So, every day thousands of immigrants are turning 18 and getting their voters' registration cards. Every day thousands of traditional Americans are dying off. Just today, if we ran the exact same election with Hillary making her deplorable comments and Hillary still, having her coughing fits and so on and so forth, she would probably win. She would certainly win 2 years from now. And when that happens, look at the last election. Florida and Texas were razor thin.
Right.
That is not because Democrats are winning the argument. If people know nothing else as the country goes under, it's not because Democrats made good arguments. It wasn't MSNBC. Oh, suddenly, the clever arguments of the progressives. No, they changed the voters. They're cheating. Right. That's what they're doing. They're about to have a country where no Republican will ever be elected president again, as happened statewide in California and is about to happen in Florida and Texas. And at that point, Trump it'll just have been a joke presidency that scammed the American people, enraged, amused the populace for a while, but he'll have no legacy whatsoever. Some of my friends will say, and you're probably holding on to hope with this, but he'll probably get a couple more Supreme Court nominations. We've given up on the wall and immigration, but all that matters now is the courts. Yeah, okay, if you can never elect another Republican president, what are the courts going to do?
You get 30 years, maybe, and then everybody retires or dies.
Or they just pack the courts. They don't play fair.
That's true. Well, Ann, let me ask you this then, Ann Coulter. November, the second Tuesday after the first Monday in November 2020 comes along, and there's exactly as much wall built that day as there is today. Does Ann Coulter vote for Donald Trump for re-election?
No, nor will, I think, most of his supporters. Why would you? To make sure, Ivanka and Jared can make money? That seems to be the main point of the presidency at this point.
It's certainly disconcerting to those of us who believed the president, and I haven't given up full hope yet.
Well, you have a radio show. You've got to talk about something. When you think about a world, who is involved or talks about politics in California or New York State? No one. What's the point? Every once in a while I'll meet some some sweet person running for, I don't know, governor or attorney general as a Republican in New York. They're lovely people, but, eventually I have to ask them, why?
Right.
Why are you, there's no possibility, there is no circumstance in which you will win. And so, people who are interested in ideas and politics and the world we live in, they stop paying attention to politics. That will be the entire country. There will be no point to talk radio, to Fox News, to my columns, to at least any political books I write. It will be over. We're looking at lights out. This is why immigration is and has always been, or at least certainly very clearly in the last 10 or 15 years, the most important issue, because every issue is decided by who votes.
The always shy and reserved Ann Coulter, the latest book, Resistance is Futile, How the Trump-Hating Left Lost Its Collective Mind. I knew you'd have something to say on this topic, Ann. I thought you would anyway, and it turns out my suspicions were right. I appreciate you calling in.
Good to talk to you, Derek. Bye-bye.